Stop what you're doing right now. Are you a horror filmmaker, producer, writer, actor, or do you own a small business? How would you like to be a part of the very first horror-centric, mental health-focused film festival? That's right, April 30th, 2022, Horrific Hope Film Festival at the beautiful Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester, Virginia. Submissions are now open, and if you guys submit before December 18th, 2021, you guys will get the lowest fee prices that we are running for this festival. All the details are going to be in the show notes below, and we hope you guys enjoy this podcast. What's going on, guys? Welcome to Victims and Villains. After a month hiatus and celebrating 400 episodes, we are back live on Twitch and our new streaming home. So what is going on, guys? If you guys are new to our content, we are a nonprofit that creates content like what you're watching right now to educate and engage individuals on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. And if you guys have been living in pop culture for the last 10 years, Marvel is about as pop culture as we get nowadays. And we got a brand new Marvel movie to talk about. But before we jump into talking about the Eternals and spoiling the mess out of it, I am joined by 2 out of 3 of the guys from You Have to Watch This podcast. One of them I'm lucky enough to have on staff with us here at Victims and Villains. My name is Josh, aka Captain Nostalgia, and I'm gonna let these guys talk about their show. Mr. Allen and Devin, what's going on, guys?
Okay.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this show, Alan?
I guess I can, yeah. So over on You Have to Watch This podcast, every week we have each other. One of us picks a movie that one of us hasn't seen before. So it's a lot of classics, some newer stuff, some cult stuff, a wide variety of things. This week is Devin's pick. Devin, you want to talk about what we're doing on the show this week?
Yeah, so I literally just broke with tradition already. So if we make each other watch one movie, so this week I'm doing a triple feature where we all we all basically have each other watch a movie musical that we haven't seen before, or that we know that other people haven't seen before in the chat. So this week, we're watching Rent, we're watching Little Shop of Horrors, and we're watching A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. That is our movie musical triple feature. Tune on in. Take a look.
Yeah, we are live every Tuesday on our Twitch channel. I think we commented in the chat there. So you can go over and give us a follow on our Twitch page. We're live every Tuesday with our show. We've got some fun Ghostbusters content planned for the month of November with Ghostbusters Afterlife. Devin does some gaming stuff, and I think he's got some fun things planned.
I do.
And we have an ongoing Marvel-related wager going on right now on the show.
No.
Do we want to get into that quick before we get into Eternals?
Bro, please.
Okay.
I love this bet, by the way, and I'm really, really hoping that yeah, well, just go ahead.
What I told Josh what the bet was, we were together getting drinks, and he almost spit out his beer.
True.
So
good.
What we have going on right now is what I'm calling the Spider Bet. With Spider-Man No Way Home coming out next month, which is crazy for me to say. Devin and I have differing opinions on what the movie is going to contain. I believe I am in the camp of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will be showing up in the film. Devin, on the other hand,
is right.
What is your stance?
So my stance on the thing is that I don't think that they're going to show up in the film as major characters. If they do, they're going to be just quick things in the post-credit. This is firmly going to be a Sinister Six movie. They're bringing all the villains in. That's going to be the crossover. No, like, Spider-Man, like, live-action Spider-Verse thing.
So I said this is a wager, so we have some stakes here.
Oh, there are stakes.
If if you were able to tune into the Horrific Hope live stream that Victims and Villains did a few weeks ago, I streamed Spider-Man 2 in my full Spider-Man suit for the stream, and Devin was reading me trivia about Spider-Man. He also stumbled across a fan script for Spider-Man 4, which he read part of, and it was not good. So if I lose the bet, I have to recreate 10 pages of scenes from that fan script in full Spider-Man attire.
And you better believe there'll be J. Jonah Jameson heavy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so I will be playing all of the characters. I'm adding that to it because I'm a glutton for punishment. I will be playing all the characters in that. If Devin loses,
this is why I want him to lose.
Devin lives in London, so if Devin loses, he has to go around the streets of London in a black suit and tie and recreate the whole Spider-Man 3 dance montage.
I'll do it. I will. I won't have to, but I would do it.
So
I just want to see that. Like mostly, like I don't know if you guys have ever seen the video of the guy that goes around New York City and like he's like just kind of like singing like pop songs and like super like over sexualizing them in New York. That's what I want. I just want to see like I think to make it just a little bit better, what has to happen is Alan and Ryan, and I want to throw some suggestions in there too.
Oh yeah.
We have to pick the playlist that you have to dance to.
Oh no, it's James Brown. It's Get Up on Your Funky Soul. Like it's going to be the song from the movie.
It has to be the song from the movie.
Or anything close to it that we get. Anything close to it that we can not get copyright flagged for on YouTube. So,
I mean, it'll just have to have roughly the same tempo and feel, I guess.
And it's not just it's the whole montage.
Oh,
so it's also him having his landlord's daughter bring him more cookies, like while he's on a payphone. And Dr. Connor's like, you didn't get any of this on you, did you? Like, it's the whole montage.
No, that'll be fine. We have payphones everywhere here. They're red and adorable. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Well, I think Miss Little Moon in the chat is saying, "Oh God," with what looks like just cry faces.
I think that's because she's going to be the one who has to film Devin's.
That's 100% right. She'll have to be on board for this. I'm so sorry.
I'm more sorry because I know she's going to have to lose. She's going to have to do it because
I'll find people. Don't worry.
I mean, I'm game for that. So
okay, come on over to London and do it.
All right, you got to fly me out though. I don't have that kind of money. I mean, if sponsors would, if people would like to sponsor a trip, we'll. And
the thing is, if you come out, I won't just do that song. I'll do any song you pick. Then you're out here, you get to pick the playlist too.
Yep. So look, you guys can donate to us in the chat. Make that happen.
We can make this happen. This could be real.
Okay, so you guys, I guess we will see what happens in the next coming weeks. If you guys like Spider-Man and want to support us on Patreon, Alan is going right now through our the original Maguire, and then he's also going to go through the Garfield duology as well from now until the end of the year, and just diving into all the Spider-Man goodness. But we're going to keep that Marvel train going, and I have already shared my thoughts about this movie, spoiler-free, on our YouTube page. I want to know what you guys thought about this movie, because this movie seems to be very polarizing. It seems like you either really love it or you really hate it. So, Devin, what are your thoughts on this movie?
I really liked it. I think that Marvel did the thing that I keep thinking movies can't do, but Marvel keeps doing well, is having an ensemble cast of all of these different characters and making you care about each and every one of them and not making any one in particular feel underserved. And I think that's quite a feat to pull off in a movie. I think there are other film studios who also do superhero movies who can't quite pull that off. and we've seen examples of that. So I'm really happy that Marvel kind of nailed this one. I thought the cinematography was beautiful. I liked it. There was some like weird things I had with some plot points, but otherwise, I think I really liked the movie.
All right, Alan, what did you think about this movie, man?
I'm with Devin. I really enjoyed this. I can see where some people have some issues with it, but I really enjoyed how they told this complex story about this family unit from space that not a lot of people are familiar with from the comics, but made it feel completely different than the last time they did that with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
This film really does break the mold for the Marvel films, I think, but in a positive way. I think the ensemble cast was great. I think people who I thought were going to steal the film didn't as much, which I was kind of disappointed in at first, but the more I thought about it, I'm glad that didn't happen. And I'm really interested to see where this story goes in the future.
Fun fact for you guys, our lead, Gamma Chan, if I said that name right, this is actually her second Marvel movie. Do you guys know what her
Captain
first Marvel
Marvel
movie is?
Romana spoiled it for me. Yeah, Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until I saw a side-by-side on Instagram the other day. So in the chat, make sure that you guys let us know what you guys thought about it, because we're getting ready to dive into spoilers. I'm actually going to put in here in the chat that spoiler alert is getting ready to come into effect. Yeah. So we're officially in spoiler territory, and I got really excited because I am the black sheep of this podcast, and the reason that I like being the black sheep on the podcast like this is because I feel like it makes for better conversations when there's diverse opinions. I just kind of thought this movie was all right. Like, I'm not in the camp that this was the best thing Marvel's ever done, and I'm also in the camp that this isn't the worst thing Marvel's ever done. It kind of blows my mind that this is the worst reviewed Marvel movie that we've seen, because there have definitely been a lot worse movies.
Well, and I think part of that has to do with some of the things that have been going on with this movie on the internet recently. And I know we're not going to dive too deep into this, but I think there's a problem with fan culture if you're going to go into a review site for a movie and review bomb a film before you've even seen it.
Right.
I think that's just a big problem with the film culture to be at large. I think looking at a film and just knowing bullet points of things that are in it that you disagree with and deciding to give it bad ratings based on that isn't what film reviews are meant for. And I think the film suffers from that a lot, because the film dives into things that Marvel hasn't done before. We have our first love scene in this movie. We have our first same-sex couple in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think if Marvel's going to keep growing the way it's going, you have to start diving into these things. And I think there's just too much negativity based on that stuff that affected this film in a negative way.
Yeah, see, I wasn't aware of any of the internet backlash around this, really until you had brought it up. But I think it's frustrating. Did any of you guys know any of those like bullet point things going into the movie, or did you go into it completely fresh?
I
ahead,
knew
Josh.
about Brian Tyree Henry's arc of being same-sex marriage.
Sure.
I knew about that. That was the only thing I knew about, because I tried to stay away from trailers, images. I tried to go into this movie as blind as I possibly could, and I think for the most part I succeeded, because there was definitely a lot of things that I will say that definitely surprised me, but I feel like everything I was hearing about the LGBT elements in this definitely didn't. They just, I don't know, like they I feel like they were made a bigger deal of than it needed to be. Like just the fact that a character just happens to be in a same-sex relationship, it doesn't hinder, it doesn't, affect the plot overall. Like I feel like they just really just kind of took that and just blew it up a little bit way out of proportion. I think a lot of that kind of goes with the backlash that you're talking about, Alan.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason that was so news heavy is because that got the film banned in multiple countries. You can't see this film in China. You can't see it in several Middle Eastern countries because of that relationship. And I think Marvel did kind of advertise like this film is going to have representation for the LGBTQ community. And I think it does, and it's not a lot, but it's there, and I think that's an important step for the MCU in general going forward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I couldn't have said it better myself. Like it's not a lot, but it's at least you're validating it's another validation for the LGBT community from a juggernaut like Disney, because Disney in the last few years, I think we've definitely been kind of seeing a uptick in the content that they're creating and making sure that representation is valid. I think you definitely got to see that in, was it Luca this past year? And they've definitely done a few other things. I don't know if we've seen it in the Star Wars universe.
We have like in Rise of Skywalker, there's a moment in the final scene where there's a two women kissing in the background, and it's a brief shot. Yeah. And I think Lucasfilm at the time was like, hey, we have representation, but everyone's like, that's it? Like, that's all you're going to do? I think Marvel handled it much better, showing that Phastos is in this loving relationship with a husband and a son, and like establishing them as characters a bit before the kiss. Like this is not just, hey, look, they're kissing, you happy now? It's like, no, this is an actual relationship, and we're going to dive into this a little bit, because everything he does in the film from a certain point is for his family. Yeah.
So, and the thing I like the most about it is that it wasn't that wasn't his character. Like his whole personality, once you found out, like once that happened, isn't, oh, he's a gay man. That's not his personality. He just happens to be in a loving relationship with a man, and that kind of representation, I think, needs to be normalized more. And I just like to see that.
No, thank you so much for that, because I feel like one of the things that we cover a lot of indie stuff and like DIY projects, and a lot of them, I feel like if they are for the LGBT community, at least you kind of that's never normalized. It's not just two people coexisting. It's we have to lean into these, I don't want to say borderline stereotypes or like archetypes that like people think that like if we're gay we have to be very flamboyant, if we can't just be normal. And I actually have a friend who is in the LGBT community, and she's talked about the fact that she's like, I don't understand like that this whole like loud and proud thing, like I am just a person and I happen to like the same sex, like that, like normalize this, like please.
Yeah. So to take this back to the story standpoint of this movie, I'm going to be honest, I was really relieved to see that he was in a same-sex relationship because of his daughter. And if we're in spoilers territory, is it fine that I just jump right into spoilers territory with this?
Yeah, we're in spoiler
okay,
warning,
good. So. All right, here we go. So as Alan knows, I tend to nitpick a little bit when it comes to movies. And the second I saw that he had a daughter, I went, okay, so now he's a robot, but then they made it so the robot could also have babies with a human. Why? And then I'm like, oh, it's an adopted daughter. He's in the same-sex relationship. You did it. My terrible nitpick is completely averted. Good job.
Doesn't he have a son?
Yeah.
Is it a son?
Yeah.
It is a son.
Whoops.
I mean, maybe in the European version it's different, but
maybe.
Very plausible.
While we're on the topic of his relationship, like getting away from the same-sex relationship aspect of it, his connection with humanity, I thought was very interesting, because he's the creator of like technology for the Eternals,
Mhm.
and he helps introduce new technologies into mankind, like to humans. And when the nuclear bombs go off in Japan, he is devastated and gives up on humanity in the 40s. And then you jump to present day and see that he's grown to like love another human being and have a family with a human. And it's like that to me was like gut wrench, like heartwarming, like that he was able to get past his abandonment of a whole species and find love in that species, which I thought was wonderful.
It's also very humanizing too,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because you think about it, like think about how many times you've been hurt by, a friend, or even by potentially a spouse. How many times, someone close to you has said something that you took the wrong way. And one of the things that, to your point, where, Hiroshima, which is the point where he kind of just walks away from humanity, it's really heartbreaking, because like war does things, and it brings out the worst in humanity. And here you have a character that is explicitly so tied to humanity, and there's a sense of redemption that comes for him by kind of finding love and a son and a family, and crafting that to kind of almost redefine your world. And I think that really humbles him, because like I know that like after I've had a fight with my wife, and it's always kind of one of those things that like it's like, who's gonna say I'm sorry first, and who's going to bring that redemption and that restoration back to the relationship. So that was a beautiful thing for him to kind of find, and just how much passion was in it for him was just probably one of my favorite parts of his character arc.
And the movie generally does a really good job of showing these different characters going through their own arc, caring for other people and humanizing them, and really kind of grounding them in a way that something this, I'm going to call it high concept science fiction, really just helped. I mean, if they had stuck with general paragraph of text about this is the world, these are, the things in it, and then it was just about them going on rootin' tootin' space adventures, shooting deviants. Yeah, exactly. Like, it would have been such a bad movie for it. But it gives you all of text. It goes, we need to get away from this. Let's just ground this hard in these characters that have real emotions, real connections, and genuine character arcs that I think alone could have made up a whole story. Is this a problem?
No, I think comes, I think if anything, that is the credit of Jack-Kirby, who like actually left DC after creating the fourth the New Gods, and Dark Side, and the New Gods, and all of that, like Mr. Miracle, all that stuff for Apocalypse. And I don't remember actually what the New Gods world is called, but like all of that stuff. No, there's Apocalypse, and there's a flip. I can't remember the good side that like Mr. Miracle comes from, and the High Father, but like a lot of that stuff comes from it. And I feel like, to your point, like this movie kind of really echoes and proves that it's possible. So Warner Brothers, call Ava DuVernay back, bring back the New Gods.
Yes, that's not gonna happen.
I'm still butthurt about that.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, like having the basis in the comics is important, but also being able to translate that from page to screen is also important, because you can have, if you have like somebody like, this is gonna sound like I'm against James Gunn. I absolutely love James Gunn, love everything he's done with the Guardians and the Suicide Squad. If you have somebody like James Gunn take these characters, and then you just are getting like Jackson Pollock painting jokes and like a talk, like there are two different ways you can go with this. You can make each character a caricature of itself and go the comedic route, which I think Marvel has done a bit with like something like Guardians. This goes the opposite direction and keeps everything grounded in like, I don't want to say reality, but keeps it grounded on a personal level. Everyone in here seems like a real person. Their stories are believable for the consequences that, like, for the circumstances that they're in. And I think their relationships really, you can see how they care for each other. And I think a lesser filmmaker could take these characters and not deliver what chloe-zhao did. And I think a lot of the credit goes to her and the team on this film.
Oh, absolutely. And she had a good hand in crafting this movie as well. She's also one of the 4 writers attached to this picture. And I've been telling people since this film came out, like, if you haven't seen Nomadland yet, like, it's such a simple concept that they end to do, but it's kind of almost like a backwards documentary, the way that she's able to, like, film it. It's incredible. Oh, wow. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, no, Nomadland really does dive into, like, one single character in their inner arc, like where that character starts and ends up at the end of that film. You can really see through their lens, like, just watching them. You can, like, a lot of it's dialogue. It's a lot of looks and great cinematography. And I think a lot of that plays into this as well. So I'm really excited to see what she does in the future.
I mean, is she signed on for other Marvel movies now?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything.
This is my take on it. When at the end of the film it says the Eternals will return. If they don't bring her back for it, I think that's their loss. There's a lot of hubbub online right now about, with the negative reviews and the low Rotten Tomatoes score, will Disney bring her back to do Eternals 2? And I'm like, why wouldn't they? Like, go ahead, Josh.
You just brought up James Gunn. Like, James Gunn is the only filmmaker that could do Guardians.
Yeah.
Like, even when those characters are intertwined into the Avengers, Gunn is still there calling and talking about the shots. I'm not sure if he has, like, a writing credit on Endgame or Infinity War.
I know he wrote the dialogue for the Guardians.
Makes sense.
For Infinity War.
So you have a character, a director and writer that's ingrained into this. And I will go as far as to say is that I feel like this is kind of like a natural segue to kind of talk about the post-credit scenes a little bit and kind of what this is going to mean for the future. You cannot do an Eternals sequel. You cannot do any of these characters without Zhao at the helm, or at least one of these writers at the very least. I don't think that this movie works without the vision of Zhao. Now, I have, unlike you guys, I have my own personal opinions and my own personal gripes with this, but I think that as far as a filmmaking standpoint goes, you need Zhao.
I'm just curious, Josh, what are your gripes with this film?
Yeah, I was going to ask. No, let's do it. Let's do it.
Is it that Jon Snow and
Rob Stark.
Rob Stark don't have more than one scene together, like in Game of Thrones?
No. I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, so that.
Well, can Devin and I geek out about that for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I kind of. Part of me was like, I hope they have more than one scene together, but the fact they only have the one scene together made me super happy.
It was so good.
Yeah, it was meant to be in the thing together.
You got it, Josh, and it was good.
We're done.
All right. So like I said in my spoiler-free review, this movie, I feel like you guys talk about, like, the development of the characters, and I never felt really attached to any of these characters outside of Cersei. Like, Cersei is kind of the only one that I feel like really feels fully developed and fully fledged as a character. This movie, for as much as it tries to do, it still at the same time feel like it feels overbearingly long at some sequences. Like, honestly, like, this is a movie that, like, the way that it ends up, I feel like you could have taken this movie, shaved about 25 minutes off of it, and the theatrical cut could have been a director's cut. But it being Marvel, they're not going to do that. And then the deviants to me just kind of felt anticlimactic and just kind of felt like they stuck in those Marvel tropes. Especially the fact that you have a deviant that basically shapeshifts into a humanoid deviant to gain a consciousness. That just kind of seems to be brushed aside because he's defeated kind of quickly.
Okay. I completely agree with you on the deviants.
Yeah.
They were kind of wasted in this movie. Like they're there for a reason at the beginning of the film, but as the film goes on, they're supposed to be this threat, but they're just kind of tossed to the side story-wise. And I agree with you on that. Like the whole humanoid deviant, I thought at the end was going to team up with the Eternals, fighting. I guess we're in spoilers. So when they're fighting Icarus, but yeah, it was just kind of like the enemy of my enemy is still my enemy, so I'm still going to fight them. So it was just kind of weird to me. Like it didn't really feel like it was necessary to have Thena and that deviant go off in the cave while everything else is happening. It felt distracting.
Well, it was interesting because it turned it away from being the big bad of the movie into it being in wrap for Thena's story arc, and it being like what completes her story arc, which I guess just isn't what it was set up to be. So I mean, I remember when the deviant came at the beach at the end, and I was like, oh yeah, he's in this movie too, right? Yeah, come on, bad guy, you're welcome.
Yeah, and to your other point, Josh, I completely agree. Cersei is the most fleshed out character in this film. I think where the other characters get their development and a lot of their meat for their story is their connection to everyone else. Their connection to Cersei, the connection to the other Eternals. And I think that's where the bulk of their story lies. And I can appreciate an ensemble film delivering what they did with that in this. Like there's not much, like I don't know much about Kingo besides he was a Bollywood star. I don't need to know much more about that, but I understand his dynamic to the rest of the Eternals. I understand Druig's connection and how he left the group and all of that. Like I think building those connections is what this film does really well. And when you have this family unit story that you're telling, I think that was more important than fleshing out each character individually in this film, because there are so many characters.
There are. And I think to a point that, like, you know, not to compare apples to oranges, but you look at all of the fleshed out, how long it took for characters to be fleshed out in Snyder Cut. And that in particular took 4 hours, but it fleshed it out in such a marvelous way. And I would love to see something like that done for Eternals, because I really went in, I will say, out of the 3 properties that we got this year, this was the one that I was looking forward to most, because I love Zhao as a director. I think she's a great storyteller. It looked like, to your point, Devin, what you talked about earlier about it being high concept sci-fi, like it just looked like it was so completely different than anything Marvel's ever done. And I'm like, I want to see something completely different than they've ever done before, because I'm kind of honestly tired of the formulaic things that we've gotten. And this one, I feel like, just from that standpoint, like, I understand ensembles are really hard to do. I would love to see like a director's cut, maybe like an extra like 45 minutes placed in here to kind of flesh out more of these characters.
Well, that's not coming to Disney Plus, but you can see the IMAX version on Disney Plus here soon.
No, I think I agree. I mean, I think that, I mean, Alan's definitely right, such that like a lot of the characters' development are their relationship to characters, but some of their, because you don't get a lot of their background, some of their motivations seem a little bit weird. Specifically, I mean, and this talks to some of the relationships. Kingo at the end, not wanting to do the final battle because he agreed with Icarus, walking away and not doing it, but then just in the end being like, I guess that's how things turned out. I was wrong. It's fine. And I was like, well, I felt like there should have been specifically a little bit more there. I don't think it was enough to take me out of the movie, but I'm like, I want to know more about your motivation and why you're just suddenly fine with everything turning out the way you didn't want it to turn out.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Yeah, he seems like a character that I wanted a little bit more of, because Kingo's character, being this like Bollywood star was honestly one of the more surprising elements in this movie. I absolutely freaking loved it. One of my favorite scenes is like when they're on the plane and he's talking to Sprite about how like his like dynasty is like, this is my great great grandfather, this is my great grandfather, this is my father, this is me. And you just kind of get to see like it's just the same exact person. Like I thought that that was one of the best scenes in this film. And it's, there's a part of me that kind of almost thinks that like his character was only his motivations, because I think that they don't really explore them all that well.
Well, and I just talking about Kumail for a minute, I was expecting more comedic relief from him in this film, like I hinted at the beginning of the podcast, because a lot of what I was reading was Kumail steals the movie every scene he's in. He's not in it that much, and he doesn't really like. He doesn't really like the scenes that he's in that are meant to be funny are funny, and he does have some funny moments, but it's not too much for this film. It's not like he's making Tony Stark level quips,
right?
And giving everyone nicknames. Like he's levity when you need it, but also he does have that moment where he's like, I'm just walking away from all of this, which leaves me like a bunch of questions. Like, so when everyone else linked up with the Celestial at the end, was he just like in India and like rising up out off the ground, glowing with everyone else?
Like, I don't know that he was a part of it. I will give this movie credit. He walked away and was away. I was expecting the moment where he was like, haha, guys, just kidding. I'm back. Family. Pew, pew, pew. And it never happened. And good. I mean, good for the movie for saying this character chose not to fight.
And I think a lot of what your issues are, Josh, might have to do with a lot of this is set up. Like, we're in a weird time in the MCU where we're setting up what the next big overarching story is going to be. And I feel like this film is going to be important to that in the future of the MCU. And I think this is a big introduction to a lot of different concepts that the average moviegoer is not familiar with. Like, we've been introduced to Celestials in Guardians, but this is a bigger, like, deep dive into those. And I think we're going to dive more into like the Kingo character and the relationship he has with Cersei and Phastos. Like, in the next film, because he did leave, like he left them and wasn't there for that final fight. So what are the repercussions of that going forward? I think there's a lot to answer for him in the future. I don't need those answers right now.
Like, so like, does he actually like get called up to like the home guy, like the I can't at the end?
It was all three of them. It was Phastos, Cersei, and Kingo.
Oh, I didn't know that he was there too.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
Oh,
because there was three people.
It was. Who else would it? Yeah, I think it was just them, right?
Yeah, because the other three were on the ship.
That's right. So is Sprite Sprite's a human now, so it's just Sprite's left behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
left behind.
I'm gonna go on my little quick Devin rant. Halfway through the movie, I went, "How unfortunate they cast a child actor. What are they gonna do when she grows up?"
You know, I thought the same thing.
Good job, movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I did not like Sprite as a character. Out of all of them, she was the one I was like, ugh, not. I don't want to have to. I just did not. I could not get behind her character at all. I understand her motivation of like, why did he make me a child when I have to live here for thousands of years and can't experience life like the rest of you? Like, I get that bitterness. I get where the character's coming from. I was not a fan of her at all.
Same. I will be right there with you. Like I don't know. She just kind of felt like baggage throughout the entire film. Where like if she was with Cersei, she felt like baggage. If she was with even Icarus, she felt like baggage. And I get that. Like, you know, you want a character that, you know, you need to root for or whatever. I just didn't see her purpose in the overall storyline.
I feel like a lot of her purpose was a little bit like Kingo's purpose too, and that was that relationship to Icarus. I feel like a lesser movie would have made Icarus the main character of this, because a lot of the big deal and the big conflict in this movie are people's relationships to Icarus. I mean, Cersei's relationship to Icarus is a big kind of jumping off point for the movie and a big source of tension. It's a big deal for Sprite. It's a big deal for Kingo. They all talk about how, like, you know, they all have these very strange, very different relationships to this very powerful person. And I think that's what I like about Sprite's plot. I like the aspect of the unrequited love, about how, like, you know, I'm stuck like this. There's no way he's ever going to notice me. And for that reason, when he goes off and he's like, I'm going to go do the bad thing, she's like, yeah, I'm coming along too. This is, you know, it gives that motivation. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I think that part connected with me. Is it was just the interesting different ways you could see people butt up against Icarus. And I think that she served that more than she was a character in her own right, I think.
I mean, that's fair. I want to go back to a point that Alan made a few minutes ago about the internet talking about, like, Kamal kind of being the Kumail. I don't know how you say his name.
Kumail Nanjiani.
That guy. I want to know.
I've been listening to him on podcasts for the last 12 years. So if I don't know his name, shame on me.
I want to know, like, did you guys who stole the show for you guys? Because for me, I'm gonna say it was definitely Angelina Jolie. Definitely kind of felt a little bit nostalgic for me, if I'm gonna be honest, because I grew up with her as Tomb Raider, Lara Croft. This year celebrates 20 years for that movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I just absolutely adored her in this. I think that she had a strong emotional arc. She was absolutely a badass throughout the course of this thing, and I'm curious who stole the show for you guys.
Alan, what do you think?
I was going to tell you to go first.
No, you go.
I think Angelina Jolie really did was one of the highlights of the film for me. I really enjoyed Gemma Chan as Cersei. Like, she did a great job of, as a moviegoer, you're on the journey with the main character and discovering things as they discover them. I really was drawn into the story because of her performance and her wonder as things are happening to her that she's not familiar with, like abilities that she didn't know she had are like just her path of discovery in this. I really enjoyed going on that ride with her throughout the film.
For me, I think Don Lee as Gilgamesh stole the show for me, even though he wasn't in all of it. I love him. I love his character. He's such a phenomenal actor. But I think what connected with me the most was his plot in this. I love the idea of having to care for somebody and being like their guardian. And like, I mean, as somebody who's, had to care for somebody with dementia, his character arc felt very, very relatable to me. And, I liked it. I really liked it. I connected with it well. That's it. Yeah.
And also, we would be remiss to mention, but Miss Little Moon also talks about how this is the first time that we've ever seen a deaf character casted in the MCU. She really liked her character, and she's talking about Lauren Ridloff's Makari. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
I really liked her character. I did not like the way that her CGI as a speedster looked.
I loved it.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention. That. No, tell me. I didn't pay attention to it.
I mean, so there are a lot of different schools of methods to go about speedsters. There's the Smallville method where you just blur out everything behind them. There's the Flash DW method where you put them on a treadmill and just have a green screen behind them. There's whatever Ezra Miller's doing in Justice League where his arms are like flailing about. And then there's this, which is like a hybrid of all three. And I really enjoyed it. Like it really felt different from what we've seen DC do. It felt different from what we've seen the X-Men do with Quicksilver. I don't really think Joss Whedon did anything with Quicksilver in Age of Ultron, so I'm not even going to count that. No, I think they handled it really well. I was more disappointed in they didn't really do much with her character in the present day. Like I spent more time trying to figure out like, okay, so if the ship's underground, is she like phasing through the dirt to get back in there? Or is there like a secret passage that only she knows about in the desert? Like I spent more time on that. I really enjoyed the speedster elements of it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was exactly like Alan, where I thought that it was interesting and unique. I don't know that I paid as much attention to it enough for it to like bug me. I was just like, oh, she's fast. Look at her being fast. And that's like all the more thought I put into it.
Yeah, I did really like her arc with Druig. Am I saying that right?
Druig, yeah.
Druig. I really liked the two of their chemistry, and that's an element that everything we see in this that's an element that I definitely want to see expanded upon. I mean, not to say that there aren't other elements, but that was one of like the top probably 5 elements of this movie that I think just really did such a great job. And Devin, I want to go back to your point real quick, specifically about the dynamic between Gildoff and Gilgamesh and Athena, kind of like that. Would you compare it to kind of almost like superhero, like dementia?
Yeah, I mean, it was caregiver, and then she had essentially superhero dementia is kind of how I took it, or Alzheimer's, where she was, remembering things that were like in the past. She wasn't quite in the present day. She was reacting a little bit more violently and more extreme than she would, which is kind of late stage dementia symptoms. Which, I mean, once I started making that connection in my mind, you almost couldn't convince me that it was anything else. I'm not even sure I know what her actual illness was.
Oh, it's called Mad Weary. And the way that they described it, though, is interesting because they kind of almost describe it as like mental health in a way. And the way that we process mental health as a society, the way that you're specifically talking about how this is a there's a line in the movie that says, well, it's mad weary. No one talks about it because we don't know how to treat it. Yeah. And that was one of the most heartbreaking things in the movie for me, because I think we do the same thing with mental health, where we are so quick to say, oh, well, you're X, Y, or Z, take this medicine, instead of actually sitting down, listening, having conversations with people, and finding out the best way to actually help and assist them. And I think that Gilgamesh coming alongside, being like, look, so you don't have to get rid of her memories, I will come alongside and I will partner with her. And that's what I think we genuinely need to see happen in order to see a change in mental health caregiving.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I like that point a lot. And I like that. I mean, now that we're talking about this, it almost seems like the whole, we wipe their memory every time they, go on a new mission, or every time they, like, before it gets too heavy, just kind of cutting out the past and not actually accepting it and processing it and it being a part of you. I think that's almost another conversation about mental health too, where there's too many times where you're like, you've had something traumatic or bad happen, just bury it. It's fine. It's in the past. It's over. We're dealing with here and now. Forget about everything, which is an inherently unhealthy way to deal with something. And they show that in this movie, where it almost feels wrong that they're wiping their memories. And it's almost kind of good that Thena has some of hers, even though it's hurting her, and she needs to literally process it in order to become a character again, or become, out the other end of it, basically.
Yeah, you don't see many stories deal with forced repressed memories, which I think is what a lot of the Eternals are dealing with. I think that's something really interesting that the film takes on. Like, what if somebody was pulling your strings and wiping your memory every 1,000 so years, so you can go do this again on another planet?
I think it's interesting too, the way that you guys are specifically talking about this, and specifically also, Devin, to your point about kind of how society treats men as a whole, the way that you don't really have to talk about your feelings. It is buck up and kind of move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And that creates such this like ripple effect and starts a foundation where you're now normalizing the fact that guys don't have to necessarily talk about their feelings. They just need to repress it and move on. And that is probably and arguably one of the most unhealthy things a guy can do, is actually not talk about his feelings. And I get it. Like, look, my wife and I have conversations all the time where, like, I don't talk about my feelings and kind of the emotions that I'm feeling until it like boils over. And that is incredibly unhealthy. And I think that this film definitely explores that with, to your point, Alan, where you're talking about how like all of these like super, like when the memories kind of start flooding back in, and you kind of get to this notice of that moment where Cersei has I can't remember the overarching like big god kind of thing with the 6 eyes.
Oh, begins with an A.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, yeah. It's not Amaranth. It's something like that though. It's like Am something.
Yeah. So why are you guys trying to find that?
Erisham.
What is it?
Erisham.
So like when she has that conversation with him specifically about like this is what they've been doing, and there's this kind of like almost like realization like it's almost too late. And I feel like that's the way that we kind of normalize the mental health of men, is like, hey, like it's okay.
Well, and even taking that a step farther, I mean, the plot for a while is, why isn't Icarus the leader? Icarus is the punchiest of everybody. Icarus is the strongest man. Icarus is essentially the Superman character of it. And it's showing that like the Superman character and the Superman mentality doesn't fly, pun not intended, I hate it, anymore. It's the reason that Cersei was picked was because she had empathy, and she was able to be more in touch with her emotions and to, empathize with the humans. And I think that's cool. I like that they're showing that, like, nowadays there's no place for this, like, man of steel that shows no emotions and he can punch things harder than anyone else, and that's all that matters. Like, that's not what wins the day here. And I love that message.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
I wasn't trying to laugh at anything you guys said.
No.
I clicked on the IMDb page for the actor who plays Erisham, and I just realized he's their narrator for last week with John Oliver.
Oh, funny.
So I was like, oh my God, that's hysterical.
Yeah, no, I think that you're absolutely right in what you're talking about, Devin. I think that, we need to find a way to normalize and have these conversations about it. And, the fact that I'm glad that we're kind of getting away from these archetypes like Man of Steel and Superman, and, this guy has to be strong. And one of the things that I've loved about the press readings is Brian Tyree Henry actually asked if he was gonna have to lose weight and kind of get in shape to play a superhero, and the director was like, no, this is my vision for this character. And I think that having something like that and being in a society now where body types and body shaming, you don't necessarily need to be, it proves that heroes come in all different shapes and sizes. Yeah. And I think that the same can be said about mental health, is that, one practice for mental health is not going to necessarily be the same for another individual. And I think that we need to kind of normalize and listen to people.
And one of the, just touching on this real quick, one of the things that I loved most about when Thena is having the issues with her memory is when Gilgamesh steps forward, no, I will take care of you. Not everyone is as lucky to have somebody step forward and be like, yeah, I'll be your caretaker and help you through this. And I think that it speaks a lot to their character's connection in their relationship, that he's able to be like, I will do this for you. I'll be there for you. And I don't think everyone's lucky enough to have that in their life.
I think that's what drew me to the character, is that, just right away, he's like, and then there was even one scene where he was like, I did it before, or I'll do it again, or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, all right, win my heart. You do that, Don Lee.
And on a similar note, some men just want to become a giraffe and just can't get that from their relationship. So
that's all he wants. Just a giraffe.
I mean, what else could you want more in life? Giraffe, you could do anything, see anything.
For miles. Oh, I love that.
Well, I guess on that note, with Kit Harington, do you guys want to kind of progress into some of the post-credit scenes?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I guess Alan, give us a quick recap on what happens in our first one.
In the first, okay. I'll do my best because I had an interesting experience in the theater with this one. So in the first mid-credit scene, we have Thena, Druig, and Makari on their ship trying to reach the last three Eternals on Earth, not getting connection because they were taken by Erisham. And then Pip pops out of nowhere, voiced by Patton-oswalt.
Love it.
Eros, the brother of Thanos, Star Fox, shows up behind him, played by Harry Styles. Which is the point where my theater full of teenage girls went absolutely crazy because evidently my theater was filled of teenage girls.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It
We
was
came all this way for Harry. That's it.
so it reminded me of the scene in Endgame where everyone came back, but it was one guy and you had just met him. It was that level of nuts. I was like, okay, I get. My brother who was with me at the movie, he's like, they cast Harry Styles in a Marvel thing? They're geniuses. Like, they're just gonna get all the money now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, like, that's a character that I definitely want to see expanded upon, especially the relationship between him and Pip.
Yeah.
In the comics, I absolutely adore their relationship, and I was really bummed to see that they weren't actually in Infinity War, but in hindsight, you really don't need them. But it also, I'm kind of curious how you guys feel about it. Like, for so long, Marvel has kind of been built around the idea of Thanos as a central villain, either him or Loki. Does it feel like by having Eros and Pip introduced now that we're still holding on to Thanos?
I don't think so because we don't know what their relationship is in this universe. We know what their relationship is in the comics, and they don't get along. I don't think it's going to be too much of a connection. I think if anything, it establishes that Thanos was an Eternal as well. So it'd be interesting to explore that just a little bit, just enough that we're not getting Josh Brolin back. Be like, so this is my backstory. Here's like I want to know where Eros is coming from. I don't need to really know too much about him and Thanos. Like, yeah, okay, you're brothers. Okay.
Well, it doesn't seem like they're introducing him as like central to the conflict of the Infinity War at all, or Endgame. He's just, hey, he was there. His brother's just doing his crazy brother thing. He didn't care about that. He's off doing his own things with Pip. Now we can bring him in now that the universe is officially over Thanos. But he's still a big enough name that like anyone knows who they're talking about and might have a preconceived notion about him based on who his brother is.
Okay. Yeah. I can get behind that.
Did you get the sense that it's too much Thanos though? Was that where you were landing on it?
That's kind of where like I am, because like wow, I feel like we're building and we're making those like small baby steps towards Kang the Conqueror. Whether you're talking about Loki or you're talking about What If or you're talking about the upcoming post-credit scene from Shang-Chi. Or Doctor Strange or the upcoming Spider-Man, we're exploring the idea of a multiverse, and that's what I love. And I'm even curious if these two guys are related to our Thanos, but I don't want them to be tied to our Thanos anymore. Like what you were saying, like I would be cool with kind of like them like explaining kind of like very briefly, like maybe giving his backstory, but not necessarily to where it's like a focal point moving forward.
Yeah. No, I mean, just like going forward, Gamora is still going to be the daughter of Thanos. Same with Nebula. You're still going to have those connections there. Plus, everyone at least everyone on Earth knows that Thanos is the one who snapped away half of existence. I'm sure Captain Marvel's been out preaching the gospel of Steve Rogers and telling the story there too. So I'm sure everyone knows who Thanos is in the universe. So I think you're gonna have that shadow loom large over the MCU while we're establishing the next big bad. So.
And it might just help with transitions too. I mean, if you have this character who has to get out of his shadow, I mean, all of the Marvel heroes that we know from Endgame need to get out of the shadow of, okay, we built up to this big movie. Now we need to do something else. And we need to still be heroes after that. I think that I think it fits.
I can get behind that. I love the fact that we are getting Patton-Oswalt to play Pip though. Like I'm just going to nerd off for a second. Like I like perked up in the theater when like that happened, I was like, oh, it's Patton-Oswalt. You know,
Have
just
you
ready.
guys seen him as MODOK on Hulu?
Yes, love it,
So
love
good. I haven't,
it.
so-
Oh, it's so good. I didn't know you were a Patton-Oswalt fan too, Josh, and that makes me so incredibly happy.
I love him. I went to go see a screening of Color Out of Space a couple years ago,
Oh yeah.
and the way that the screening worked was they did a Q&A right afterwards, and it was led Nicolas Cage and the director, and it was done and ran by Patton-Oswalt, and I was like, dude, like this is one of my favorite moments of like being in a theater right now. Like, so about this.
Love
High
it.
praise.
Oh yeah, and you guys can. I love Nicolas Cage so much. You guys can hear us talk about it. Nicolas Cage twice a month, every Saturday, because that's high praise.
I'm even on one of those episodes. I did that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was exciting.
But no, I think the one that I'm most curious about, and like this is where I think you start to kind of get into the fact of what we were saying earlier about you needing chloe-zhao to come back or to have a handprint in these characters, is Blade and the Black Knight. This final thing at the end.
Yeah, I didn't know who that was. I had to Google him. Did you guys just know?
I had a feeling it was Blade, but my brother was like looking up online. People were like, it was because this was before Chloe-Zhao confirmed it. People were like, oh, it's Samuel L. Jackson. It's like, oh, well, that could be interesting if they're setting up Secret Wars because Secret Invasion, because Kit Harington was on Game of Thrones with Emilia Clarke, who's going to be on Secret Invasion. So maybe they're just going to keep retelling Game of Thrones like arcs, like one scene with him and Richard-Madden, and then like he kills Emilia Clarke at the end of Secret Invasion, and then like her dog gets mad and destroys a chair. But no, I was like, that sounded like Mahershala Ali, and I was like, I wonder if that was Blade, and then it came out that it was. Like, okay, I'm all for it. So
yeah, so I didn't actually put two and two together until she came out and reported, and I was just like, because like I wanted to know who it was that was like talking to him in that scene, and then I read that, and I just like I messaged Micah, who's one of our podcasters here, and I was like, dude, Blade was in this movie. I've been so excited. Like Blade has been my most anticipated Marvel movie since they announced it.
So do you think she's more involved with Blade going forward, or you think she's more involved with the cosmic side of things with the Eternals going forward?
I desperately hope that it's Blade, but I also know that they're trying to do a predominantly African American creative team on that, because Marvel's trying to really allow representation moving forward. And for as much as chloe-zhao might actually like Blade and love that character, I think that she's definitely going to have a hand moving forward on the cosmic side.
Yeah, I think going forward, like I think the Eternals are going to be her main focus if she stays with the MCU.
Yeah, sure.
I think she'll definitely be helping out with whoever does end up directing Blade and having that connective tissue there with the Dane Whitman character if he's going to appear in that film. I'm just kind of glad they weren't setting up a Disney Plus show at the end of this. Because as much as I love the Disney Plus stuff, I don't need the movies to start setting all of that up. I got enough of that with Elaine in Black Widow.
All right, so I'm probably gonna butcher this guy's name, but we do actually have a director for Blade, and it's Bassam Tariq.
Tariq.
Oh.
IMDb just has him rumored. I don't think it's confirmed yet.
No, he is actually confirmed. There's several interviews here
Oh, wow.
with IndieWire, Collider, IGN, MovieWeb, Deadline.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So lots of
The
lots
IMDb
of-
lied to me.
and we also have a release date, and I mean, this is wild to me. It's October 7th, 2022.
Really? Less than a year.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Wow.
Is it?
Because they just
You don't
shifted
think so?
everything back. They just shifted everything back. Blade hasn't been greenlit. I don't think they've given a Blade a date yet. But I think it's
They
gonna be
haven't. All right, give
October
me 1 second.
2023. I'm guessing.
Oh, you think so?
That's my guess. There's a date in the fall of 2023. I think Blade's gonna fall on.
So, do Blade and Kit Harington's character like ever interact? Ever? I've never seen a single Blade movie. I don't know anything about Blade aside from he's a vampire, I think. Does he interact with anyone else ever?
I'm not familiar enough with Blade either, or the Black Knight to talk about it.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay.
But to your point, I want to say right here, there was a tweet that went out from Marvel's India account that said that they're now this is before all of the shifts happened.
Yeah.
The release slate was actually October 7th, 2022. So that's actually where that comes from. But we were also supposed to get the Marvels, which was originally slated for November 11th, 2022. But that's got pushed back to 2023, correct, Alan?
Yes, I'm looking up the release dates right now.
It's called The Marvels.
Yeah, so the Marvels, it's going to be Captain Marvel, Brie Larson's, and then it's also going to feature the Miss Marvel from the Disney Plus show.
Oh, that's cool because I like Miss Marvel. I like her storyline. I think she's cool.
So yeah, Marvels is February 17th, 2023.
So chances are
2020. This is what we have in 2023. We have the Marvels in February. On May 5th, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Oh.
July 28th, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And then there is a untitled Marvel film set for release November 13th, 2023. I would not be surprised if that's where Blade falls.
Oh.
Yeah. I would either bet it's either going to be that or what is it? It's the Fantastic Four. That's the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah. Fantastic Four doesn't have a date yet. They also have an untitled film set for release on February 16th, 2024. So.
Oh, wow.
I think it'll be either one of those two. But, we're also in an era now where, they set up Shang-Chi to be a pretty prominent character moving forward. They're setting the Eternals up to be a pretty predominant group moving forward. So I think as you're winding down on like your Guardians and your Spider-Man, I think you're going to start to embrace a lot more of these characters that we're starting to see in Phase 4. Now, I would be curious to know when Phase 4 actually ends, and what the climax of that one is.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because we also have a bunch of Disney Plus shows that are filling in the gaps here.
Oh, right.
Well, we still have two more? We have She-Hulk and Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Hawkeye.
We have Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, which is coming out next year, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion, Ironheart, Armor Wars, and the Untitled Wakanda series. So
interesting.
Yeah, Phase 4. Like I would think that a good stopping point for Phase 4 might be, like on paper at least, is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, because a lot of what we've been setting up has been multiverse stuff with WandaVision and then Spider-Man and Loki. Like wrapping all that up in that film, I think would be a good pinpoint for Phase 4. But like beyond that, maybe Quantumania is where you
Yeah, that's
wrap
what I
it
was
up.
gonna say.
Oh yeah.
Just because that's where you're introducing Kang supposedly.
But
Oh.
how many films do we normally get per? It's like what, 5 films per phase?
It varies because Phase 3 was
Iron Man 3.
no, Phase 3 was from Civil War until Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh yeah, dang.
So Phase 3 was pretty long.
It was like 11 movies, I think. Yeah, so speaking of the phases, I wanted to ask, kind of at the top of this, I think this is right. This is the first Marvel movie since, I don't know, I'm going to say Phase 2, where other Marvel characters that we kind of know and love don't show up at all in it, even in a post-credit scene. So even in Shang-Chi.
Yeah,
I don't
you
want
still
to.
had Wong and you still had the Abomination.
Yeah, and I didn't want to spoil the post-credit scene for that one either. But like, this is the first one where like no other connected Marvel characters pop in to say hi. Like Hulk isn't like, "Hey guys," like halfway through the movie. Was that disappointing at all to you guys, or was that okay here?
It's the first film to do that since Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. Like they still make it, like we know enough that we're in this world that they acknowledge the past events, but then like they actually happen on like the Marvel Netflix shows. Like, yeah, there's this big battle in New York, but that's all we're gonna say. They mention the Avengers by name. Like we know where we are. They talk about the snap and the blip, so that we know like what world we're living in. And so I don't need people to show up. I'm okay with telling stories outside of the core group of heroes that we've come to know.
Yeah. I'm also gonna say that, like, to me, it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Because, like I said that at the top of the show, like to me, like I'm kind of going through this like superhero fatigue where, superheroes are among some of our most listened to, read, and watched content.
Oh, wow.
So superheroes aren't going anywhere for victims and villains. I'm not in the same place that I was during like Endgame and like Civil War, where like I'm like diving into the comics and like I'm still here. Like I was still there opening night for Eternals, and like I still have movies in this genre that I'm looking forward to, but I'm just not in like this like headspace where like I am enthralled and just like captivated by everything that Marvel does in DC. Like for me, like I found it really refreshing that there's no ties to this. I think that this movie does, and we didn't even really talk about this, but like its use of non-linear storytelling to kind of talk about not just how the Eternals shaped, but how long they've had a hand in actually shaping the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I just thought was absolutely breathtaking.
It reminded me a lot of what Chris Nolan did with Batman Begins. Like the non-linear storytelling in that, which I really enjoy. I think they nailed that perfectly.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% really dig the fact that there's no connections to any other Marvel characters. Like, yeah, it's like, okay, cool, like Selma Hayek talks to Ajax, like, yeah, hey, like, Thanos like wiped out, and so you understand, as Alan said, the world of which you're living in, but it never feels heavy-handed, where like some of these other like Phase 4 shows and movies we've seen feel so connected to other things that it's like you can't trust the audience to stand on its own without these connections to Wong or Black Widow or Captain America or just so many other things. And the Eternals definitely doesn't feel like that in any way, shape, or form, and I absolutely love that in this movie.
I agree. It was refreshing. It really was, to not have to like you said, not have to lean on their past success to make this one a success.
Well, it's kind of like a palate cleanser for what they have coming next, where you have to know
everything
years of Spider-Man films. So real quick, going back to what we were talking about, Phase 3 had 11 films.
Yeah.
So if you assume like if they're gonna end it with one of those films that is untitled at this point, it's going to be, they might end it on Fantastic Four, and that will be 11 films.
Wow, what a weird way to end that.
Yeah.
What a bold way to end that.
It's kind of poetic. Ending Phase 4 with Fantastic Four.
Funny. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of Victims and Villains. Where can people find out more about You Have to Watch This podcast?
You Have to Watch This podcast is available right here on Twitch. If you scroll back through the comments, we are here. Just look for us. You Have to Watch This podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. Is that it, Devin?
I think it's it. Yeah, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, got it.
There you guys go. You guys can follow us everywhere if you guys want to hear more podcasts like this. Check out our mental health resources and library. Get connected with us here on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you guys get your podcast from. Simply go to victimsandvillains.net. There you guys can not only check out more podcasts like this, get connected with Patreon to check out all of Alan's Spider-Man deep dive journey. But most of all of that money goes towards helping us get mental health resources into film festivals, conventions, and more. And speaking of film festivals, if you are a filmmaker, consider submitting your film to our first ever film festival. It's horror-centric, mental health focused. And if you guys are listening to the podcast version of this, you guys can find all of the details in the descriptions below. But that's going to do it for us. So until next time, yeah, have a good night.